this meeting of the GBRA Board of Directors to order in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Government Code 551, and certify a quorum of the board is present. Have all the notices been posted?
Yes, sir.
All right, Rusty, would you lead us in the pledge?
Yes, sir. We'd be happy to. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
I want to welcome everybody today. It's been a busy month since the last few weeks, and every expectation is going to continue to be busy for the coming months. I appreciate everybody's input and continued involvement as we work together to find a long-term solution to issues that are of great importance to all of us. The way I'm going to move the agenda this morning is straightforward. I'll make a couple of comments on public comments that we're required to make, and then we'll deal with the consent agenda, and then immediately go into the discussion on the hydro lake. So if you are prepared to have comments on the hydro lakes, it'll move very quickly, and we'll be to that point of the meeting that if you choose, you can make those comments. So let me go on with the note on just general public comments. This portion of the meeting is intended for comments from the public on non-agenda item-related topics. We ask that you please limit your comments to 3 minutes. To address the board, please sign and completely fill out the attendance sheet maintained at the entrance to the building where the meeting is being held. No responses or action may be taken by the board during the public comments. To address the board related to an item posted on the agenda for action or discussion, please indicate the item number you wish to comment on using the attendance sheet. The board will call individuals to make comments at the appropriate time. So before we do the consent agenda, we have one housekeeping issue that relates to possibly changing the date of the next board meeting from October the 16th. I have a commitment on of a health-related issue on October the 16th, and I really want to make sure that I can be present for all of the board meetings. So with the board's indulgence, I would like to see if we can't reschedule that meeting, if possible, for the Wednesday following the 16th. That will put us kind of in line with the timing of this meeting. That would be the 23rd. Could you check your calendars and see if that would work?
That would work, and that also would play in our hands with Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, not never mind. Sorry, I don't want to go.
Okay. You always know what you're talking about. Rusty, will that?
Yes, it will. Yes.
Steve?
That's fine.
So I would make a motion that we reschedule the October meeting for October the 23rd at 10 o'clock. Do I have a second?
Second.
Yes.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, with that, let's move into the consent items. I would consider all of those consent items as one motion unless anyone on the board would choose to remove one to discuss. I would not entertain a motion for all three.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So let's move into the report on the hydroelectric system.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I think what we'll do initially is open it up to public comment, and then we don't have a lot to update the board or the public on at this point, as everyone knows with the ongoing litigation. It's been well reported on what the current status is, but I'll go ahead and invite some folks up to speak if they would like, and then I'll make a couple of comments. The only person we have signed in is Valerie Daniel, but if you'd like to come up and make comments, and anyone who has not signed in but would like to make comments, please just approach, and you're more than welcome to speak.
Please, we encourage all comments.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Valerie Daniel, and I'm here on behalf of Lakewood Gonzalez. In December of 2010, we all gathered in downtown Gonzalez. At that time, we were told we would be losing our lake leases in the year of 2018. It was said at that time GBRA intended to turn things back over to nature. We had absolutely no idea what the bigger picture was. My family, friends, and I made lots of memories because of our leases, and for that I thank y'all. I'm not here today to address GBRA directly. We've tried doing that in the past. I'm here today in support of our Lakewood groups that are trying to preserve our waters. These meetings are held to provide information to the public. To each organization represented here this morning, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Although we knew we were losing our leases, I would personally say our fight to keep Lakewood started in March of 2016 when our dam broke. We apparently were late to the game. It's been an uphill battle, and while I've said it before, I'll say it again. I hate that our sister lakes have been forced to join in on this fight with us, but I'm truly grateful and appreciative of the support. I've printed some pictures. These pictures here are worth 1,001 words. You've likely seen them plastered on Facebook, as I'm very passionate about our waters. I simply want to use my remaining time to let these photos serve as a reminder of what's in store for our lakes if GBRA's feet are not held to the fire. We have been told lie after lie after lie. We had what I see as a victory in court last Monday. We still have our waters. Here's to a plan and a resolution for our sister lakes, and here's to working towards fixing Lakewood and Lake Dunlap. Thank you.
Thank you. Although no one else has signed to speak, we welcome your comments.
My name's Jim Holzer. I'm from GBRA. Don't have any property on the lake, so make that clear. And last 3 weeks, I was gone, out of state, and I thought maybe there would come some resolution. I guess there is starting of it maybe in the courts, but I was kind of surprised when I came back, caught up on the newspaper, and I will clarify I was in South Dakota, Idaho, up in that area. Internet connection's not very good up there. Beautiful weather though. When it's 100 degrees here, it's 62 there during the day. So anyway, from that perspective though, I did want to make a few comments. First, I want to thank you for your service on the board. The other thing I'd like to say in regard to that is I'd like to see maybe a future board meeting could have more discussion on the development of water resources. Specifically, I'm interested in Cuero 2. And I know the board member from DeWitt County and Gonzales County could maybe work with their county judges to tell them how important it is. Although I think some of them might have a little reservation. But in any event, that would do, if you develop Cuero 2, it would really make dwarf Canyon Lake, which you're largely depending on something that was done 50 years ago, just like the dams were done 90 years ago. So the clock is ticking on that, and the clock is ticking on the need for additional water resources in the community. Now, within that, after saying those things, what I'd like to say is I've been to Lakewood. And maybe Lakewood is a better characteristic of it now because of all the trash that's in it. And so I would second this I don't know where I would second this lady's concerns there. I would also, I have a concern. I don't know if any of the representatives, I don't see them in the room, but maybe some of their staff in the room. I'm really kind of concerned about the composition of the board. This may come to everyone as a surprise, but 50% of the people out there are women. They're all male. Largely, as I can determine, I don't see any Hispanic representation on the board. And why is that important? Because I think 5 or 6 of the counties are dominated by Hispanics in terms of the population. To me, I don't know that that entered into the decision to leave Lakewood alone, but it did concern me because the population in Gonzales County is majority Hispanic. In fact, there are only 2 counties that really have a dominant Anglo or white. White is the Census Bureau. If you want to look at the data, you can have a population that's dominated by Anglos, white, whatever your term is, white, but by the census data. And that would be Kendall County. That would be Comal County. So what that means is when you walk down the street, you're likely to see more faces that look just like yours. But if in other counties, you're not. So I just don't know how the political process failed to get some kind of representation that represents the board. And again, I'll leave that up to everyone involved in that process. And I know the legislators really recommend you, even though the governor approves you. So, and sometimes that's lost, and the legislators don't say that. So, and also I look at the composition of the GBRA management team. In the management team, don't see any Hispanics other than one. And so you're complimented for that. But when I used to be in state government, when I came into an office that was dominated by Anglos, and I'd look around and say, who are we serving? And lo and behold, Hispanics, African Americans. I made my task, number 1, to gradually change that workforce because there were qualified people there, many qualified people. And I was successful in doing, I was in Seguin for a while and changed because we did have a large African American group here that we served and Hispanic. So that's really I guess part of it's you, Kevin, on how you pick your future management staff. But the rest of it is to the legislative folks, because I think it really has colored, and not that any overt, it just colors your vision. They call, there's a term for it with the lawyers that are involved in litigation of that nature. In fact, I think there was a company I just read in California that hired nobody but Hispanics. They just, in a major food company, they just lost in court case and were forced to hire Anglos and African Americans. So it can work both ways. Now, I would hope you do that. And the other thing that I'm puzzled about, other than future water planning, is how we move the office. This is a nice building. I thought, I had never been here, I thought, well, maybe everything's dilapidated and it's just time to move on. How you made a decision to move the office to New Braunfels. I would like to have an update on when you plan to break ground there. I'm sure folks here would be interested. Someone may want to attend those events. But to me, because I work for the state, and the state mileage says it's 15.1 miles from Seguin to New Braunfels. And I worked here in the office here for a while too. And I think if that's your best explanation, you need to polish it a little bit before you go to the legislature and try to justify that move based on that. It's just, it doesn't make any sense. And it just, again, I don't know, but again, the board is willing, all Anglos, and I am too, all Anglos really want to go to a community that's dominated by whites. Now, again, that would be kind of an unconscious decision because none of you would do that.
We appreciate your comment a great deal. It's exceeded 3 minutes.
Okay.
And if you've got more things to say, I don't want to stifle discussion or your expression of concerns. But
Well, I'll just sum it up, and thank you very much for allowing me to speak to you. And I hope to come to future board meetings. Like I said, I was out of state, and I just hope that it would result.
And please do.
So, but anyway, I hope you come to a solution. I hope somebody pulls a rabbit out of the hat and solves it.
Well, I think that every time people that have expectations of good things can come together and there be a meeting of the minds that works for everyone. And that's certainly our goal. Thank you for your time.
I appreciate it. We'll be back.
Mr. Chairman, just briefly to address part of that is, it's been on our website for a while and on our FAQs that we have put the office expansion in New Braunfels on hold. One of the items before you today is an additional or replacement of a portable building outside because we are completely out of space. We have 15 positions posted right now, but we have nowhere to put these people. So that's what's coming before you today, but just to put that out there. And just briefly on the hydro lakes, again, like I said, we don't have much. Everything's been well reported and out there from the settlement. I would like to publicly acknowledge something I think that I have failed to do at this point. I want to thank the lake associations for working with us. Despite what you see in the media in the courtroom, we do have meetings with all the lake associations as often as they want, and they have been very grateful with their time and understanding in trying to move this forward to a resolution. In fact, I think our next one is tomorrow with Lake McQueen. So that is an ongoing process, and I really appreciate them sitting down at the table and working with us as we move this forward. The next item from the court settlement was essentially each side would designate an expert. We designated Sam Baugh with HDR, who's been working with GBRA for a number of years. The plaintiffs designated Greg Line with Hewitt and Stollers out of Houston. They're both engineers. And then those two parties will pick their own independently third-party expert. And then that panel will essentially sit to decide if there are safe zones on the lake, what those safe zones should look like, and then how do you enforce those safe zones. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions, but that is essentially all I have for item 6.
As I recall, part of the court settlement, first of all, I congratulate all sides coming together. You know, it's a very, very difficult situation, and certainly passions have been high. I know that I've received a number of phone calls, most of which have been objective and professional. A few have been impassioned and a little bit scary. Have received a couple of things in the mail with other board members' addresses as the return address, which is a little unusual, I suppose. But part of the settlement that all sides reached was that there would be a report within 30 days with the 3 experts. Do you feel that's on schedule to occur, or will additional, I think the settlement also provided for additional time if necessary?
I don't know at this point. The two sides have not had an opportunity yet to sit down and talk. I expect that they probably can get to something within 30 days. They may ask for that extra 30 just to, you know, cross their T's and dot their I's, but at this point they have not yet had an opportunity to sit down and talk. So,
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions?
Curious about the 2 experts, and they will be using information that not only the lake groups have been able to glean over the last couple of months from their engineers that they have hired, as well as GBRA's engineers, to make their decision, or will there be additional information gathered by the experts as well to bring all of that to the table?
that's going to be up to them to decide. All information that we have is going to be made available to them, but it's going to be up to them. That's the one thing that can shift it from the 30 to 60 days. If either side decides they want to do their own modeling, that would take some time. If they decide they want to work with the existing modeling that's out there, then it will take less time.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Just short. In case you're not fully understood, but I'm going to comprehend the method, and you alluded to it already, is that our attempt, making no attempt to influence these engineers. Sam Vaughn is a well-known, respected engineer, and what Kevin is saying, I think, if we've asked him to do a job for us, we're gonna stay back and let them do it objectively, without any undue influence from any one party.
No, I believe the court order requires that, yes, sir.
And I also think it's important to, and I know that we have been doing that with our website, providing as much information, answering questions that have been posed not only to staff individually, but also, I'm assuming, to us, that we brought back to staff to answer, or from people checking the website that is being updated daily. Is that correct? Every time there's information that is being asked for?
It's updated often, maybe not daily, but often.
But I think it's important that, or at least I'm under the impression, and I have been always thinking this particular thing, is that whenever there's something under litigation like this, we are not privy to answer questions or speak about anything that is going on, and I think that's important for the general public to know as well. We can certainly thank folks for their questions and appreciate the fact that they are in the discussion with us, and also make sure that they understand who they could possibly go to get those answers. But at this point, while this litigation is going on, and if I'm wrong, staff, please correct me, but I think that's important for everyone to understand, is that those types of discussions are not part of what we should be doing as a board at this time.
Right. There's no other comments or discussion. Let's move to the general managers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and we are just going to do 2 reports for this board meeting. And first up, we're going to have David Harris present for operations.
Morning, Chairman and Board.
Morning. Morning.
Give you a quick operations report. And as y'all know, but everybody else doesn't know, we do a lot of things that don't relate to a lot of what we've been talking about lately. So this will give you some updates on some of those projects. Our northernmost operation we have is Buda Wastewater Treatment Plant. This is one of our operators working on a sand filter for effluent. This plant treats the water at a treatment about 1.8 MGD. That plant is under expansion right now. Will go up to about 4 million gallons a day. The water runs through this after disinfection and is filtered, and we're working on the under drain system here. That water is a type 1 reuse water, which means there's no restrictions on it where you put it. And this is actually used to water the city hall in Buda and the city parks and the area along there with their greenscaping. So this is something we did in-house. We put some new substructure to hold that sand up, put some stainless steel screws and some caulking around that. We'll replace that media a little bit later. In Luling, this is our farthest one to the east, water treatment plant there. You can see there's a little red asterisk out in the river there. This plant's been in operation a little over 40 years, and the intakes, there's 2 intakes at different levels that take water out of that river channel. The river has been lowered there. You can see a little bit, about 6 feet. They're working on a city park downtown in Luling. We thought this would be a good time to do some inspection and maintenance on those intakes. The pumps you see to the right, we got those pumps, and then back flush those intakes, and you can see the water walling out there. Make sure that they're clean and clear. I did some inspections with some divers as well at that time, just to ensure that we have ample water to treat at that plant. A few months ago, you saw a picture with Stephanie Shelley standing next to this orange valve down there. It's a 36-inch ball valve, and there's the vault that it's in. This water is used to take water from Guadalupe through the canal system to some industries that are down there. This one goes to Ineos and a few others. And this ball valve was failing and wouldn't shut off. So we priced that valve, just for your information, that valve, if we buy it new and it's picked up in Houston, is $105,000. Very expensive. It's been in operation for 30 years, so of course we didn't want to just go buy a $105,000 valve without doing our due diligence. We priced other valves in different ways that we could replace that. we found a contractor that works on valves, and what you see here is we've got a crane. Our staff helped work with the contractor, and then we got inside that valve and did some cleanup work. We worked on the actuator, which you can see on there, the motor drive to the side. We did some adjustments, did some repairs on that. I think we're about $15,000 total on that repair, and it's back in service and working the way it should be. So it was not an easy situation. That valve was 15,800 pounds. So about a pound is still a little more expensive than steak, I guess, but it's not your typical valve. Toledo Creek, down close to Victoria, we had a few cabins that were down there. I think were leftover FEMA cabins from years ago that in Harvey, I believe, that they were brought in for one storm that we got to use, and then another one took them out. So the staff down there decided to look at some ways to have some rental property down there for people to spend the weekend. Not everybody has an RV slot. We have 78 RV slots down there, but not everybody has some. So they purchased a shell. You can see here we've got 2 shells that they purchased. The staff there are going to put the air conditioning in there. We have an electrician works for us on site. We'll finish those out. They will not have bathrooms in them. They'll still have to use the public facilities down in the park. But people can come stand in the lake down there. Those will be about $12,000 a piece with our staff doing most of the work. We looked at trying to purchase them finished out, and it was about $20,000 to $25,000. This was built locally as well, brought in. So new technology, ROV. It's a submarine, believe it or not. It's a remote operated vehicle. This is one that we purchased a few weeks ago, and it's sitting on the bank of the lagoon at Western Canyon. Bottom left picture is what you will see on the screen on the controls that the operator will have. The reason we got this technology is to inspect tanks. Annually, we have to inspect our ground storage tanks, elevated tanks. Most of them we have are ground storage. And we were hiring contractors outside that used very similar technology, and some of them used the exact same equipment. So we were paying outside people to do it on their schedule. So we ran the numbers, and we can pay for this equipment in less than a year, just off of savings from outside contracts, and it'll last longer than that. We can also use it anytime we have an issue that we want to know about right now. So like raw water intake, pump stations we want to get into. Part of the reason is the evaluations for zebra mussels. We're having to look at those more often. We're going to do more than annual inspections on our Candy Lake and anything in Guadalupe, and we can use that. And this is just a picture of a pump that's in that lagoon, just to show you a little bit about that. San Marcos water treatment plant filter, we came to you a few months ago to get approval on this one. There are 8 filter bays at San Marcos. 2 of those had issues with the under drains. You can see the staff on the left, contractors that came in, taking out those under drains. There's a lot of grouting in place that to take out. On the right-hand side, it's ready for the new under drain system, a little bit of cleanup. Right now, it's 2 weeks is what we're planning on having that thing back in operation. Back to some fun times. We had 70 participants this year in the 26th annual Kidfish at Guadalupe Park. And I like to see families and kids out there together. What I like to see also is there's about a third of those are girls, and I raised 2 girls and they both like to fish, so I like to see that. It does bring a lot of activity to that park as well. At Toledo Creek, we manage the dam there to maintain that as close to a constant level lake as we can. We do dam inspections on that for the gates there. This is about 40-year-old technology in here. You can see the stop logs on the bottom left. We'll put those in to stop the water from the lake. And then we can run a full cycle on those gates, top to bottom, see all the hinge points and do the inspections on that. Of the 6 gates, we do 1 every year, and they rotate along to keep those on cycle. The people in the vest there are engineers. I believe it's AECOM that does the evaluation on that one. The happy, smiling people, these are the people who look like they're happy to see some sunlight. Well, that's our lab staff. We're doing some cross training going out to wastewater plants and water plants. They do the lab samples for us, and we like to get them out and show them where those samples come from. Right now, they just get a bottle and they don't know much about it. So we tell them about the whole process, where it works. So you can see them. The guys in the blue shirts and tan shirts are from other divisions as well. As we do cross training, we can kick around ideas. Some of them are maintenance staff, so if we have any problems, we can go back and they know what we're looking at. Here's a few of the other trainings that we've done, most of our safety trainings. I won't read all those to you, but everything from hurricane planning to snakes and respiratory protection. Some of the new hires we have, you can see in different locations. If they're an operator 2, typically they're C-level licensed. Operator 3 is B-level. So you can see the new operations people we have in different locations. We have 2 promotions from within. Callie Gudgel moved up to lab director. She's been with us, started here about 11 years ago. And Casey Belote is the new plant manager at San Marcos Water Treatment Plant. He's got an A water and an A wastewater and about 20 years experience as well. Safety, no lost time accidents. The first one resulted in a Band-Aid. They were closing a cabinet and there's a locking mechanism so we can lock it out, and it pinched the top of their knuckle. And the second one was down in Calhoun County. There was a person texting and driving and came into the lane of some of our employees. They had to swerve off the road, and there was a little generator in the back, and when they went off into the ditch, the little generator fell off and it broke the straps on that because of the work on that. This is the wastewater plant at Singing Hills, in case you don't wonder what that is. Daryl, on his previous slide, he had a flowering plant. I didn't know what it was, so I figured we'll put a wastewater plant there. Anybody have any questions?
Questions, comments? Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, as Randy makes his way up, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge and commend and thank David. As y'all are well aware, my time is 100% Hydro Lakes, whether I'm here or in Austin all the time, and I'm united to focus on operations. But it's because of people like David. They make everything work, and they make it work really well. And there's a lot of effort that goes into that. So I just want to publicly thank him, and we are very glad to have him as part of the team.
Absolutely.
Next for finance.
Good morning, Chairman Patillo, board members. Just a few updates for you in the world of finance. Last month you adopted the budget on August 21st, and we've been involved in setting up that budget in the financial system and notifying our customers of any rate changes. Also, during the budget workshops and the board presentations, we talked about the Calhoun County rural water retail rate. One of the recommendations that we had from some of the board members was to make sure we have some communications with that group of customers down there, and so we're in the process of preparing that. We expect to come back to you at next month's board meeting on the 23rd and ask for your adoption of a rate increase for that group and making sure we communicate what's coming down the road for that population of customers as well. In the area of treasury and investments, we've implemented a new process called remote deposit or remote capture, where we're actually scanning images of checks and submitting that file to the bank for deposit. We've done that here in Seguin. We collect a lot of checks for retail customers in the Western Canyon area. And that's reduced our number of trips to the bank to once every day to once every several weeks because we don't collect a whole lot of cash in this office. In the Portland-Blanco office, they have those retail customers that they issue bills to, and have a lot of customers that pay both by cash and by check. We have implemented that remote deposit functionality down there as well, and so instead of going once a day, primarily, they're going 2 or 3 times a week, so that's reduced the amount of time and effort in driving to the bank and the expense associated with that as well. And now I want to thank you for your adoption of the investment policy last month. Part of the changes we made were to coincide with an awards program through the Government Creditors Organization of Texas, and we received a certificate of distinction for our best practices in our investment policy, and so I thank you for that. I also want to thank Sandra Terry and Oscar Ramirez. They're our investment officers as well. We're involved in those changes. And then also thank you to Alvin for setting up a sound policy many years ago, so we didn't have to make a whole lot of changes to it in order to meet the requirements for that award as well. With regard to some of the changes we made, for Johnson Ranch wastewater treatment plant, we have changed the rate structure to allow for winter averaging. We'll be implementing that, and we're working on setting that up within the billing system currently. And then also looking at debt service and planning for capital needs down the road. Obviously, we've been having conversations around the dam and spillgate replacement, but also the Carrizo groundwater supply project has continued to move forward. Last month, you approved the financing agreements associated with that. Next month, we'll bring forward the bond resolutions, and then we'll actually receive the funding for that in November. I wanted to demonstrate for you some of the work that's happening in our records management office. They're involved in a lot of different things, but Open Records and Public Information Act compliance is part of that. You can see in fiscal year 2008, we had 87 Public Information Act requests. That increased this year by 58%. The majority of those came in the last 4 months. A lot of interest in information related to the dams and the spill gates, expenses, repair work that's happening, some of the flow estimates, and some of the other types of information related to that. And so our records management staff has been very involved with that, the legal department team has been very involved with that, and then all of our operational groups that are supplying information to comply with those requests. A number of applications for grants have been submitted in recent months. I did want to report to you the top one's actually been awarded. I did receive that award last week, $200,000 for flood risk mapping in some of the lake areas, and so our engineering department will be involved with that project. It's a 3-year grant, and it's effective October the 1st. And then there was a media story on the sunset review process a few weeks back, and one of the things they identified and talked about was the purchasing and contracting process at GBRA. And so I wanted to take a minute and show a few slides related to what we've done in the purchasing world, and maybe the purpose of purchasing, or the why, as I talked with you all several months back. But first and foremost, it's ensuring compliance with laws and regulations, and then making sure that we have a level playing field for all vendors. We want competition. The more competition, the better the pricing. So we want to establish a fair and equitable process for going about that process. And we want to obtain the best value at the best possible price for all of our different divisions. And through that centralization process, we can create some workflow efficiencies and be able to generate some savings by larger and bulk purchases, or economies of scale through some of those aligned purchases. So we've been working through some of that as well. These are the recommendations. There are 8 different recommendations that were included in the Sunset Advisory Report, including some updates on the far right. You can see most of those have either been completed and or are ongoing. Many of those are things that we'll continue to revise and update as we go about our process. So I wanted to share that with you, make sure you know that we were working towards that process. And in addition to what Sunset provided, we're doing some different things in terms of best practices. And so this is some of the work that's been happening in the purchasing world since we hired the first purchasing manager in January of this year. You can see a number of different things that are happening to centralize that function in communications with divisions. Our purchasing manager meets with their operations group on a monthly basis as part of their meeting. And more recently, he's been visiting with each of the different divisions individually to find out what their needs are for the upcoming year, so we can develop a calendar and schedule and make sure we're taking care of those needs on an ongoing basis. One of those most recent improvements is the implementation of BidNet, which is an electronic procurement system. We rolled that out in July. This is a mechanism that allows us to communicate and post all of our procurement processes on a website and have greater visibility for the public. It's free for vendors to sign up. It's also free for GBRA to use. So this comes at no cost, but allows us to share those documents a little bit easier and faster, reduces the time of staff that's been involved in that process. Reduces the cost for vendors. Instead of having to mail in a bid package through FedEx or hand deliver it and spend time doing that, now they can submit that information to us electronically. We hope that it leads to additional vendors who would be interested in providing services and goods to the GBRA, and through that process we might be able to capture more historically underutilized businesses as well. It does allow for time stamping of proposals, so we have a clear picture of exactly when that bid was submitted, so we can tell whether or not they met within the timelines that were prescribed by the RFP. And then it creates a searchable vendor registry to be able to identify and correspond and communicate with all of our vendors. In fact, we're in the process of putting together a letter to send to those to notify them not only of this process, but also to notify us of if they are a historically underutilized business, we can capture that data and record that in our financial system as well. And then lastly, we're working on our financial statements and preparing for the audit. That'll be here in October. We expect to bring draft financial statements to the audit committee in November. I will have a first look at what that looks like for fiscal year 2019. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Real quick, Randy, could you go back to the 2 out of 4 on the Sunset?
Yes, sir.
What is an escalation policy?
That was related to if you have some issues or problem with a particular vendor, how do we handle that from a contract perspective? And so what we've done is modify the procurement procedures manual so that divisions will contact purchasing directly if they're having a problem with the vendor, whether they're not responding, whether they're not meeting the time schedule that was outlined in the RFP process. And so purchasing can step in and help with that process, and then if we need to escalate it even higher and get the legal team involved with that piece, we can.
One of the comments from Sunset staff when they were here reviewing us was when the division, since everything was very decentralized, had a problem with the vendor, they would try to take care of themselves, often leading to more costs for GBRA instead of they wanted to know when was management engaged and what actions were taken. So that's the escalation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Congratulate you. This is really moving the ball forward on those issues that were raised during the sunset, but also that you've taken steps on before sunset.
Yes, thank you to Randy and his team. They don't get enough recognition for what they do, and they do a lot of heavy lifting, so thank you. That's all I have for the GM items. Mr. Chairman, we can jump into action items.
All right, let's do the action items. Number 8, consideration of and possible action authorizing the general manager, CEO, to negotiate and execute a joint funding agreement between the United States Geological Survey and the Guadalupe-Blanco River Authority for the period of October 2019 through September 2020 for stream gauge monitoring.
This is an annual contract that we bring to you this time of year. We've had a joint funding agreement with the USGS GBRA since the early 60s. Back then we had about less than 20 gauges on the river. Now there are about 54 USGS gauges on the river. We sponsor 14 of those, as well as water quality testing on the river. There isn't going to be an increase in funding from last year. Last year it was $207,390. That's what we're proposing again for this year, no increase. So we're asking for consideration, possible action, authorizing the manager to execute that joint funding agreement.
Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 9, consideration of and possible action authorizing the general manager, CEO, to negotiate and execute an agreement with William Scotsman, Inc., Will Scott, for delivery, setup, and leasing of a replacement modular building at the Seguin office complex. Yeah.
Good morning. As is noted on here, Charlie Hickman or myself, well, I am not Charlie Hickman, so I am Jeff McKee doing this.
Well, you're better looking at it.
Well, thank you. I agree with you on that.
He's not seeing this, is he?
As I mentioned earlier, we are out of space here. The growth is continuing. I think everybody's doing a good job at that. So, but we are in need of extra room. And one of the things we're proposing is to get a temporary portable building in the area across the street from where our small portable is right now. That will be removed, and the room that we're looking at now is around 3,360 square feet. It'll have 12 offices, small conference room, restrooms, and all of that. So we're in the process of getting all the utilities and everything ready to hook up. So what we're requesting then is consideration and possible action authorizing the GM CEO to negotiate and execute an agreement with William Scott for the delivery and setup of that office complex. Some of it would be the setup and some special ADA ramps and all that stuff that is required. But that is the action that we're requesting.
Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion, questions?
How much do you think this will cost?
The setup is around $36,000, and it's going to cost us $3,568 a month for rent. It's a one-year contract, and with the possible, we can keep extending that per month. But the first year with setup and that one-year charges is around $79,626.
Is the other one staying, or the other one?
It will be removed. Yes, sir.
All situations considered, I think this is very good move. Meantime, well done.
Any other questions or discussion? I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Action item number 10, consideration of and possible action approving one or more ordinances of the Guadalupe-Blanco River Authority relating to boating, swimming, fishing, or other water-related activities on the GBRA hydroelectric lakes. Juliet, Lake Dunlop, Lake Queenie, Lake Placid, Lake Nolte, Lake Gonzales, Lake Wood, located in Comal, Guadalupe, and Gonzales counties, Texas. Mr. Bowl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Good morning. This is a proposed ordinance that would essentially track the court order that was issued, the temporary injunction. The court order can be enforced by contempt by a party going to the court and asking for enforcement. But this is a little bit different in that it more or less provides the same provisions as the court order, but it would allow for a criminal penalty for a violation of the restrictions that essentially the court has imposed. Now, we've had this ordinance reviewed by the Guadalupe County attorney, and he assures us that he is comfortable with it as far as it being able to be enforced and for him to prosecute violations under it. There are a couple of issues in here that I do want to bring to your attention that actually Director Moe brought to mind. There are a couple of typos in here. The final version that we will present, if the board approves this ordinance, will have those corrected. But in paragraph 1.3, the last subsection C, the last line should say fined in an amount or be fined in an amount up to $500. Under paragraph 1.4C, same thing, at the very last line of subparagraph C, up to $500. And then on the next page, again in C, up to $500. The rest of it should be okay. What we are presenting to you would be an ordinance that would be adopted under kind of two sets of authorities. One is the Parks and Wildlife Code that we have used before. The other is, and part of it would not be enforceable because, or would not be enforced by Parks and Wildlife because they deal with boat traffic. The ordinance also deals with swimming and wading and bathing, just like the court order did. So there's two sets of authorities, just so you know, under which we can adopt rules like this. One is that Parks and Wildlife Code. The other is that our Enabling Act says that we have the authority that districts created by the legislature have, that all districts created by the legislature has. One of those is water and control and improvement districts under Chapter 51 of the Water Code. That law provides that you can adopt ordinances relating to the use of bodies of water, including rivers and lakes, that GBRA owns or controls. And so that's the basis for this. What needs to happen to make both of these enforceable is that one, under the water code provisions, the ordinance will have to be published in newspapers of general circulation in the counties where the lakes are located. So that would be Comal, Guadalupe, and Gonzales. And the other is our usual procedure with Parks and Wildlife to submit those to them. So this ordinance doesn't speak exactly to the Parks and Wildlife submission that we usually do, but it does require that the general manager cause this ordinance to be posted in the newspapers to make it workable or to make it effective under the water code. It's pretty much the same for all the lakes that are still up in level: McQueen, Placid, Meadow Lake, and Gonzales. And if you have any questions about it or anything like that, I'll be happy to field them.
Is there a motion on the floor and have a discussion?
So moved.
Second. Okay, discussion, questions?
Does this provide, you said with the Guadalupe County attorney, but has it been approved by the Gonzales County?
I've not had an opportunity to visit with them. I'm happy to do that and talk to them about that. We thought that perhaps the major part of this would be in the lakes that are in Guadalupe County.
And that gives the Guadalupe County Sheriff's Department and the game wardens the right to issue citations?
It does. The requirements, as far as the game wardens are concerned, as far as policing boat traffic, would still be that they would have to have the certification for water safety officers. You know, I think the sheriff has a few of those, and certainly the game warden has a few of those. I mean,
In dialogue with the county regarding the temporary injunction settlement, enforcement is the main issue that was the concern beforehand, and still how to effectuate the court order and enforcement of the unsafe zones after they're designated from the three-panel expert. So we're still, these ordinances will mainly rely on county resources to implement or effectuate the citations. While we've posted signs and worked with the lake associations to post signs at 14 boat ramps amongst the 4 remaining lakes. So once we kind of get more information from the experts, depending on what recreation may be made available after that, that's when we will look to deploy additional resources in terms of boats and marine safety officers that can enforce this ordinance.
I should add that since Meadow Lake is in the city of Seguin, that we have spoken with the Seguin city attorney about this, and I have provided him with the draft of it. We haven't discussed it in depth, but they're aware that we were putting this on the agenda, and he has a copy of the draft ordinance.
And the lake associations are in favor of this, and they're helping out.
Oh, good. That is kind of where I was going with that. You know, I think not speaking for everybody on the board, but speaking for myself, one of the driving reasons of reluctantly supporting dewatering of the lakes was the inability to answer the question, can you guarantee the safety of people on these lakes as it relates to possible harm from another gate failure? And this takes, if it is enforced, takes a big step, does it not, towards being able to affirmatively answer that question?
It certainly hopes so. That's certainly the objective.
Do you have the sense that from the counties that they will provide resources or make resources available to be provided, these ordinances will in fact be enforced?
Yes, absolutely. The county attorney was kind enough to get on the stand and take an oath and swore that here's your ordinance. If you adopt this, we will enforce it. And so, as y'all know, we don't have marine safety officers. Our ability to adopt ordinances in the past has been not met well and has not been enforced. And so we absolutely will ask them to hold up that during the bargain and commit to that enforcement.
And as this goes into effect, currently we do constant monitoring of the damage vis-a-vis video cameras and things of that nature.
Correct.
Is there a mechanism in place to contact law enforcement if during that monitoring process we see parties in violation?
So that's been going on basically since Dunlap.
And
And
we keep a log of those?
we do, and we keep a video log too and pictures, and that's all part of, I mean, it's out there. Much of it's on our website, but it's all available. But no, our operations group in the control room is there 24/7, 365. And they have been instructed basically every 15 minutes to put their eyes on every lake and see if something's going on. And then they immediately call the sheriff and or the game warden and get somebody dispatched.
Could we have one of you two guys just review one more time all of the things that staff has done up to this point since Dunlap's failure, or providing information to people around those areas, dangerous area, stay away, and all the other things that have happened, how that's been done, so that we can understand it again?
Sure, and I don't think I'm going to be able to recall all of them, but I mean, the heightened attention is the main thing. So the active monitoring, the alarms, there's also, when we see somebody out there, they have the ability to basically push a button and it says you're in a restricted area, you need to leave. And if that warning doesn't work, there's a second warning, and if that doesn't work, then the law enforcement is called, along with the additional barricades, buoys, blockades, and honestly, the court proceeding was huge. I don't think we've actually witnessed anyone going up and down the dams since Labor Day. Part of that is because we are in the fall season, there's not as much recreational activity, but a lot of that is because of the court case and the media attention on it, I think, has helped tremendously. What else am I leaving out?
I would just echo the recognition from Director Hermes and what Kevin said about the cooperation from the Lake Association. Really, their efforts since after Labor Day and communicating with the property owners that they represent or their membership have really effectuated the closure of the lakes and the enforcement of that. I believe the Sheriff's Office, right after the court order went into effect, received more calls from residents along the river and not us, because one limitation that we do have with our surveillance is it's right there at the dams, and so we actually don't have eyes on any boat ramp on any of the lakes that the public or private utilize. So once we see them on camera, they've already been on the lake quite some time, and what we found from the first couple of days of the closure is that individual property owners have better eyes and rapid response. Again, during this court-ordered closure, we are working with the county to identify what resources, again, in terms of marine safety officers and those that can be utilized for enforcement once recreational areas may be identified.
And that's one point I forgot, John reminded me of, is that there are a number of boat ramps and they have effectively been closed. Again, credit to the lake associations for doing that. Most of them are not really accessible by the public. And so they voluntarily closed those down. The ski lodge has closed theirs down. I think there was just really one public one, the one under I-10 on Placid, and the county worked with us to go ahead and get barricades up there and block that. We know there's just anecdotally, there's access points that the public will use, text dot right-of-ways and easements to just go put a kayak in certain places. And so we're still actively pursuing all of those measures as well to see if there's other points where we know the public is getting access. Is there anything else we can do as far as closure signs, barricades, that type of thing? And so the other thing we're working on still, we don't yet have the best solution for yet, is we assume that the 3 expert panel will come up with some zones that are designated unsafe. And then we need to do something additional as far as barricades, and we need to figure out what that looks like, and we're working with Parks and Wildlife to make sure that we don't run afoul of anything.
We'll update the ordinance as well once we have that information from that safety panel regarding any safe areas of record.
Yeah, that's right. There's no expiration date in this ordinance, but it's clear that it's to implement the things that are in the court order. So we'll have to come back to you for consideration of changes to this ordinance at the point at which these unsafe zones are identified. Since the court order is not specific as to when that report is, I know we've got, the expectation is 30 days or possibly 60, but it doesn't have a date certain. So we'll be coming back to you with something else in the future.
I just think it's important to think about where we were a couple of months ago when we had young people playing on dams after, and we were extremely frustrated with our ability to control that. In other words, we didn't get a lot of people saying we can enforce the thing. Lake owner associations saying we got to do this. So however painful this process has been for the last few months, I am elated that we've gotten to the point in time when we think that it's going to be very difficult for somebody to place themselves in harm's way. And that's after all what we intended to do from the very beginning. So I'm very pleased.
I think we can be confident that anybody on the lake, they don't live there. They're coming from outside and not your opposition. So
That's great to know.
Tom, help me understand. So the Texas Water Code, Chapter 51, specifically, explain that again to me. That's what supersedes somebody's right to be on the river.
Well,
Is that what that's, or how is that?
no,
How is that? That's what I'm confused.
and that's a good question. Okay. No, that's a good question. The public does have a right to navigate public waters. There's no doubt about that. But the legislature has authorized districts to place certain restrictions on that. I don't think that a perpetual restriction on everything in the stretch of the river would be something that would be difficult to enforce and to sustain that. That said, a temporary restriction for safety purposes like we have, that's clearly temporary because it tracks the court order and something that we anticipate bringing to you and modify in the future is I think, is enforceable and acceptable. As far as where these statutes work and what that means, let me just kind of walk through this a little bit. Our Enabling Act says that we have whatever authority, except for groundwater districts, we have whatever authority has been given to any districts that are created. And it says now or hereafter. So that's the original Enabling Act. So there were water control improvement districts or their ancestors, if you will, in existence when we got created. But certainly they're on the books right now. Chapter 51 of the Water Code deals with water control and improvement districts. And that is the chapter that provides that districts can regulate those bodies of water. And that's where that authority comes from. But no, I don't think that an absolute perpetual restriction is going to work. But I think that for a temporary period of time, for safety purposes, that's not only defensible, but it's reflected in the court's order. And the court has already done it. The court has already made that order. So I don't think we're doing anything that's inconsistent with what the court has ordered here.
It's a good question, though, because the law is inconsistent with itself. Because if it's a navigable waterway, how can you say to keep off? And that's the issue we're dealing with.
And those are the biggest differences between utilizing game wardens or state police for enforcement versus utilizing municipal or county officers for GBRA's ordinance.
So,
So this ordinance is outside of the scope of the Water Safety Act, and those are the game wardens or state officers have to, their jurisdiction is within the four corners of that law. And since this is different than that, that's why we're having to utilize the water code to enable the county, with the advice and consent of the county attorney and his pledge to enforce it. That's why we can't use the game wardens for this.
These total restrictions are not unprecedented. When we've talked to some people where there have been some before, like this, for a temporary basis. One example I think that we were talking about was New Braunfels. I hadn't looked into it, but one of the attorneys that I've talked to that worked with New Braunfels before had indicated that in a situation where there was some kind of repair or hazardous condition, that stretches of either Guadalupe or the canal had been restricted for a period of time.
Are there any other comments or questions?
I guess, Jonathan, this enforcement issue has come up a number of times in other areas. And you're saying about the code that we had to use that state to voice it.
Let me jump in on that, and if you correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, basically, what we understand from game wardens is that they can enforce issues that have to do with watercraft and boating safety. But as far as swimming and wading, fishing, and things like that, they're in the court order. They don't feel that that's within their purview. And so part of the ordinance they couldn't enforce. Is that basically? So the way I've done this thing is just kind of split it into sections. If you look at the sections, there's one that's on boating, and then there's one that's on everything else. And what we're hoping is that they'll be able to enforce the boating part of this ordinance to the extent that we get manpower out there. But then the county should be able to enforce all of it. And that way we have, we can at least still, to the extent that they can supply it, we can draw on officers from both of those bodies. Do you have anything else to add or anything on that?
And no limitation on assets engaged. Now, where I'm coming from, this is a sticky thing. It still is. And prior to y'all valiant attempts, it was even worse. But for example, you've got situations where how many boats does Guadalupe County Sheriff's Department have? And is anybody limited the Sheriff's Department from engaging another entity with assets that are beneficial to their job?
We're working together to ensure we have the assets available once those experts come back.
Okay, super. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll call with the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
So I believe we have one discussion item, Tommy Hill.
Charlie always leaves town during the drought.
This is the NOAA's indices. This was created before the event that happened in Houston. So it shows East Texas is in a drought, which is not the case right now. This happens to be an accumulated rainfall map from NOAA showing I want to show you the rainfall that occurred. I think most people have seen over 20 inches of rain fell in a very large area. As far as the Guadalupe Basin, we've actually had very little rain. We did have a cell come through the Caldwell, Guadalupe, and Bear County, but that was after this rain event in Houston. It's a very isolated event. Now, if you go back and look at the last 90 days, and look at the percent normal, the color coding is the reds indicate a pretty severe lack of rainfall. You can see that Caldwell County is kind of in that bullseye, as well, but the rest of the county too is all below average. You see that reflected in the river flows. It's not bad, but we are a little bit below the median levels. Kerrville, this time of year, 63 is the median flow, 48. New Braunfels, this is above the Como River, New Braunfels, the Guadalupe River, New Braunfels. The median this time of year is around 250, 183, and then Cuero, the median flow is 105. We're down to 728, so slightly below the median. Just looking at also the EAA's gains there, this would be J17. This is the last 5 years. You can see that since May of this year, J17 took a drop. It's not unusual. They did drop about 25 feet. Still in great shape. Drought stage doesn't begin until 660. And as far as the impact on the springs, as the edgewater drops, you'll see the drop in the springs. Comau spring flow, you did see a drop, but it's not still in great shape. So is the San Marcos showing in red. We're about 200 CFS on the Comau, about 320 on the Comau Springs. Canyon, of course, we've had since we've had very little rain throughout the summer. We had dropped. It's not bad. Today we're at 907.5, so we're about 1.5 feet below the conservation pool, which is which is pretty normal for this time of year. You can still see it is from a drought stage. We're many feet from being in a drought stage. By the way, this represents the last 5 years of the canyon elevation. And I wanted to point out that we've been operating underneath these release rules. We look to the FERC license, TCQ, our water rights license, and the travel limited agreement. What's been controlling over the last many months has been the trout agreement. As far as 150 CFS minimum flow, it will end as of the end of this month, the 30th of this month, and then we'll go back to the next senior or most senior call, which would be not call, but contract, which would be FERC. So we'll be dropping down to about 100 CFS. So. And then as far as the future, it's still kind of a little muggy. These are the spaghetti graphs showing all the various runs that they would, the model runs of the El Nino models. And they're basically saying that we're going to be slightly somewhere on the high end of the neutral zone. If you remember, the neutral zone is, the indices is 0.5 and negative 0.5. So the overall estimate or the projections for the next 2 months is they're showing that we'd probably be in a slightly above average rainfall pattern. But remember, they've been predicting this all summer, that we've been in an above average rainfall pattern. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Any questions? Thank you, Tommy, very good. All right, it's 11:12, and we will stand in recess for 15 minutes, come back in at approximately 11:25 and enter into executive session.
I think, Mr. Chairman, for the benefit of the audience, I anticipate we have some movement on this legal process, about 30 to 45 minutes in executive session, but I don't anticipate asking you for any action after the fact.
All right, so after the executive session, I would anticipate that we will. It is 12:22, and I'm reconvening this meeting of the GBRA Board of Directors back into open session. Rusty?
Yes, sir. Thank you for this time. Kevin, you come forward directly, please. This was presented to GBRA at the reopening of the dam walkway at Canyon Dam. And instead of having a ribbon cutting, they had a stake pounding into the dam walkway where the protection from going over the sides with car stops was done. And so I thought, and I was fortunate enough to be able to be there to represent GBRA for our investment in making that reopen. And so staff, thank you very much for working hard on that. Board members, you are to be thanked as well. And since they presented me with this, I don't need this, but I figured Kevin would like to post this, hang it on his wall, or he may want to use it on his desk occasionally as frustrations arise.
Come in handy with my one-on-one meetings with my E-team. Looking at you, Al.
Thank you very much for your leadership. We appreciate it.
I think more useful